Please stand clear of the doors. Por favor, manténganse alejado de las puertas.
While you're in sunny Florida, be sure to visit
WARlando! Enter into a world of epic adventure.
Hello and welcome to WARlando. This is Adam, and next to me we have, not next to me, social distancing. We have
yes, Nicholas
and
Matt.
Welcome, fellas.
Yeah, good to be on.
Yeah, the coronavirus quarantine, social distancing continues, so none of us are together. We are all in our separate homes.
And I think I'm like almost exactly, well, I'm a couple days away from 2 months or 8 weeks at this point. How long have y'all been doing it?
I heard Jessica chiming in back there. No, yeah.
God damn it, I told you.
Damn it. Oh, that's amazing.
I asked nicely earlier.
Ma, meatloaf.
The meatloaf. Yeah, social distancing for me was March 13th, 14th, I think. I remember, it was that like Friday before. Yeah, I think that was a Friday the 13th, wasn't it? The Friday before St. Patrick's Day was when I actually started. I think.
Yeah, that sounds about right, because I think our first like online party was like a pseudo St. Patty's thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it was, I think Disney closed that Sunday. And that's when I knew, like, oh, this shit is for real. Disney's closing? This is not a joke.
Yeah.
That's when you know, like, I feel like there's like this level of secret information that only like the highest level, corporate executives or VIPs get, and then where they just like come in there and they're just like, no, this hurricane's really going to be for real this time.
Yes.
or whatever, you know what I mean? Or like, no, we really do have zombies.
Yeah, no,
take your cues from what those folks are doing, not anything else, not the media or any of the talking heads or any of that stuff, right?
Yeah, you definitely, no one political. If anyone political is weighing in, you're just like, how are they benefiting from what they're saying? But then when you see like major corporations, like how they're reacting, and like when they're reacting against what appears to be against their own best interest, you're like, oh shit, this is, if they're willing to lose $20 million a day, then this is no joke.
That's right. They've done some math that says it would be worse if we didn't lose 20 million. We would lose more money by not losing $20 million a day, right? Yes. Because it's got to be pure calculation, right?
Oh yeah, the chaos that would ensue if if they would have become a hub. All these theme parks would have been a hub for spreading the disease.
And it just would have been going right back out to all the places as people came from.
Yep.
All over the world.
Yeah, it's true. It's absolutely true. So that's some cheerful stuff. What have you guys been doing?
Well, I've been social distancing as well, and just working, and finally started hobbying a couple weeks ago. Just started working on some stuff and painted the War Cry terrain set.
That's awesome.
And then you and I got a game in.
We did. So we broke quarantine.
Our household has allowed us to meet up with one other family, and so you guys were kind of doing the same. You guys were social distancing, and so we were like, hey, if it's just us hanging, then that should be okay, right?
Yeah.
And so we got together and played a couple games. Yeah. And so that was fun. I just rolled some dice and moved some models around, and it was weird. It felt like old times, and it's weird to say when it's just like. Felt like old times, like from 2 months ago.
Those back in the old days, the pre-COVID days.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder, like, I don't know, I'm just excited to see, 5 years from now what we say. Like, oh, way back before COVID, what was life like back then? Things we took for granted.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird thing because I kind of don't like the word COVID. I mean, not like anybody really likes the word COVID, but it's like to talk about, COVID-19. It just sounds so like kind of almost like sci-fi a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like COVID-19. Like the way like a movie started, like the year was 2020. COVID-19 ravished the earth.
It does feel that way because I've done I went to like Lowe's this last weekend because I just had to go. I had to get some stuff. Right, there was project being done, and I had open drywall in the house, and I was like, I need to close the drywall. So there's no way to do that except for go to the hardware store, right? And like I'm literally walking around going like, everybody's like, or at least here in Atlanta, everybody is following the social etiquette of wearing masks and stuff. But I haven't got used to it visually.
Yeah.
Right? I know I'm supposed to. I know it's a thing. It makes contextual sense. But like walking around and seeing it, it feels like being in a movie or something, right?
It definitely feels strange. Very strange.
I'm just not used to being that stimulated too, a little bit, right? Seeing all that, all that motion.
Around here, I'm seeing way too many people not covering. I had to get chlorine. I went and got chlorine for the pool this morning. Nobody in there was wearing a mask. I was, but none of them were. So I just had thankfully I'm dealing with something that absolutely would kill it if it came in contact with it. So yeah, just rinse my hands with some chlorine and I'm good. But still, going to the grocery store, yeah, way too many people not wearing masks and not taking the proper precautions.
I guess that's a fair thing. If you're you don't have to wear a mask if you're in the place that has everything that kills organisms. It might be a good exception. Like, no, really, nothing can live here. Like, it's like a biological disaster in the store, right?
Yeah, they probably should be wearing masks for a total other reason because they're constantly working with poison.
Right, exactly.
Well, Matt, you do any kind of hobby stuff or keeping yourself entertained, fun ways?
Yeah. We wrapped up our. I was playing with another group. We wrapped up our Descent into Avernus campaign last week.
Oh.
So that was good. We got to play through that adventure, which we started back on Halloween, I think, something like that.
Nice.
There was a game every week. I missed a few of them, but we played weekly for a while there before, prior to all this. We were meeting up live and playing, and it's a great adventure. Tons of fun. I kept a wizard alive for a whole adventure, which I always actually, that's not true. He did die and then was brought back to life, but he didn't. He made it through the end of the campaign. I'll say it that way, right?
Yeah, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah,
particularly that. Was it Cutthroat? Was it a Cutthroat supplement?
Yeah, I think that comes across pretty well. I mean, for a big part of the campaign, you're in hell. And it's like, okay, do I want to make a deal with a demon or do I want to make a deal with a devil? Like, these are the choices. There's no I'll just pass.
I'll go with option C.
Yeah, there's that. Just die in the plains of Avernus, right?
Ooh, option C is all of the above.
Right. It was definitely pretty interesting. We had to make some deals there that we definitely didn't want to have to live up to at some point. We were just like, yeah, we'll tell them that, but we're not really going to do that, are we? Without any spoilers, that was kind of my impression of it. But great plot, good, unique content. Tons of cool new characters and surprises and all that kind of good stuff. So yeah, I found it a lot of fun.
That's great.
Nice.
Yeah, I painted a Stormcast Eternal. Finished painting one today. One of the what's called a Lord Celestant. So that was fun. I wanted to mix it up. I wanted more options for skirmish games. So, just can't just focus on one army. I'm working on 10 at a time.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, I should focus. I just get bored. I get bored pretty easily. I'll do a couple of orcs and then bored. I'll paint something else. Paint something for D&D. Paint some Stormcast. Just keep bouncing around. If I could just focus, if I could take all my energy and just focus on one positive avenue, I think I'd be doing great. Instead, so many projects I've started all around this room behind me. So many started projects that I haven't finished.
I don't know, man. I like to think, it's all one project, and you're just making incremental progress.
That's a good attitude. I like that. It's all part of one collective project. I like that a lot.
Yeah, it's all just I want to make a bunch of cool hobby stuff and do things I like, and that's the project.
It's got to. I mean, it's your hobby. You want it to last forever, right?
That's true. It's something that I want to be in. I want to be participating in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you could think about you could feel like, oh, things need to get done before you have fun with them, but and obviously the game, yes, is more enhanced to have painted minis on the table, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's what I need to remind myself is that it's what I love to do. So hopefully I'll be doing it my whole life. I can't have it all done now, or else I won't be satisfied.
Right.
You know what I mean? I'll just need more at that point. And then at that point, it'll just become like a sickness. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like a hoarder.
Yeah.
Like a gaming hoarder, and I'll just be just avalanches of stuff collapsing on me every time I move.
Right. So it might be kind of a blessing in disguise that it takes me a while to paint everything, because then that means I try not to buy too much if I don't have it painted yet. You know what I mean? And then I feel that sort of stride, that goal that I've taken when I do paint it, and then I'm like, all right, yeah, this is that was cool. I'm a badass,
Yeah, that's awesome. It is something to look back. I remember when I started, and the little bits and pieces, buying a little at a time, painting a little at a time, and how that journey goes. So yeah, that's something to be celebrated, is watching that journey happen.
Yeah, agreed. So. I mean, I don't always remember that, but I need to remind myself that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, tomorrow, right now, maybe you're not always motivated to paint, but you always come back to it, right?
Yeah, that's true.
If you really said man, I achieved every goal and I painted everything I wanted to paint, and then you never paint it again. That sounds terrible.
Yeah, it does.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe you want to be done painting.
I'm done. I'm never doing this again. That might mean it's not the hobby for me, if that happens. I have that just collector's bug in general. I'm not collecting comic books anymore, which I used to religiously collect comic books, but I feel like whatever it is I'm into collecting, I want to collect all of it. So I can't have too many of these going at the same time. But that's definitely where I'm at right now with Warhammer. I just new toys are coming out. I want to buy all the new toys that are coming.
Yeah, I totally get that. I think, to me, I love to read rules. I love reading rule books.
Yeah.
And I just love seeing the different mechanics that people come up with to play a game, right?
Yeah.
And so, to me, that's a lot of fun. And I had to kind of Humble Bundle is not a very good. It's not good for keeping that at bay as far as all the things, because Humble Bundle is so easy to just be oh yeah, of course I'll take 15 of those RPG books. I'll take 15 of those, and 15 and 15 and the next thing you know, I've got this library of games that I'll never play. I'll never have enough lifetimes to play these games.
They're still fun to look through. I mean, I bought many like that too, where it's just oh, yeah, it's so fun to read through a D&D campaign book and just or whatever, and just like, yeah, oh, this is so cool. I really want to play this. Maybe at least on some level of your unconscious mind, you've gotten to play a little bit of it.
Yeah,
you've got something out of it.
Yeah, just let my imagination play.
You're like simulating it, right? You're like, ooh, what how would like man, if I ever played this with Adam, what would he do here? You know what I mean? Or what would that character he was talking about do? There's always something like that going on. You're running those simulations, kind of some part of it all the time, right?
Yeah.
As you're kind of through it, and that's fantasizing, literally, right?
Yes, yeah, that's true. It's very true.
Oh, man, these guys would love that part,
I have this mental level of ways I'm looking at things lately where everything is just drugs because it's all about how it makes you feel. Like I was at a convention a while ago. I might have talked about this before on the show, but I was at a convention, MegaCon last year, where I looked up and I saw this painting of Spider-Man, and I immediately got this like kick of this weird nostalgic feeling. It reminded me specifically of something I saw when I was a little kid, and I was just filled with a warm, good feeling. Like, wow, you know what I mean? Like it's a drug. It's all a drug. It's just a matter of is this a harmless, life-enhancing drug, or is this a harmful habit where it's taking all my money and I'm not?
Yeah, I can just see you standing there, and then like cinematically, we just like zoom right into your through your eyeball, like right into your mind, and it's just like little Adam, and he's playing with his Spider-Man costume, and then it zooms back out, and you're like crying a little bit.
Yeah, but a happy cry,
right, like good memories.
But what all those movie filmmakers and authors and game developers, they're all selling us a feeling, and we're going out after that feeling, whether it's the adrenaline gaming feeling of wanting that kind of oh man, I hope this die roll goes right, that kind of that competitive feeling, all those different good feels. That's what this is all about. So
I think that's maybe that's an interesting way to think about stuff you like and you don't like. Is maybe if you don't like something, it's because they just tried to touch or tried to evoke the wrong feeling for you, or didn't evoke it carefully. Yeah. Right. And then you're like, oh, that's dumb. I don't like that. That's not a thing that I'm into. Right.
Yeah.
But then something else is doing the exact same thing. Right. But you just don't notice it because it's subtle or persuasive to you. Right.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Some of them, when they try to do it and it doesn't work, it feels like pandering. Like you're just doing that because so-and-so also did it, and you're trying to cash in on what they've already done. And I definitely see a lot of that in film. I mean, that's what the whole exploitation film genre is. It's about people knowing that certain things are going to get certain butts in seats, and so they're doing exactly that without any kind of art or craft or higher level of achievement in art. They're just doing whatever they could to exploit your weakness and get you into the theater,
dragging what they consider to be their art along behind the bus of nudity and gore, right?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Which
this film also has a nice score, but there's a body count as high as the hills, right?
Yep. Which I have a whole other room that's just dedicated to exploitation films and horror, all kinds of horror and B-movie and all those other things that I love.
Is it behind you over your shoulder? I know it's a sound.
One.
It's through the doorway. It's the sound barrier you put up.
Yeah.
But it looks like in Minecraft when you build the Nether portal, you which I know my daughter, she's 7, she plays this all the time, and it's you build this frame and then you build this portal, and it looks exactly like that. So
awesome. That's my Nether portal.
It's through the portal. Yep.
Well, I say come around back to my Nether portal. That sounds a bit dirty to me.
Yeah. So,
I have to go wash my Nether portal.
Yeah, you got to keep it. Hey, your nether portal, got to keep it clean.
So if you're listening to the audio only version of this, I've got a look at this soundproof, this one door that doesn't have an actual door that I can close on it. So I got a clothing rack and I put some foam, egg crate foam up, and I wrapped this brown curtain around it, which I didn't really like the brown curtain. And I bought all this fabric that looks a bit like a Star Wars playmat. I was going to make like a big Star Wars playmat, but I didn't end up doing that. Instead, I hung it over that curtain. So now it's my
so it looks like spacey and ethereal, kind of.
Yeah, it's my podcast nether portal.
Yeah, great. Basically, that's hell is through that portal.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. Portal to hell. That's awesome. So yeah. Well, then,
which is great. Like,
mission accomplished.
Minecraft has somehow like packaged hell as like something that everybody has in their household now. Any, young child has been in and out of hell multiple times.
I know a handful of ultra conservative right wing Christians that if you were to say that to them, they're like, the devil.
What?
The devil is in Minecraft. I've noticed in this quarantine that I'm walking differently. Because I'm only leaving the house like to walk the dog a little bit. So when I'm walking, I'm walking with one arm out. I'm not like swinging my arms like I normally would when I'm walking. I'm sure this is, in so many ways, this is bad for my body. This whole like staying home thing.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I go to work and I sit at a desk and I work at the desk, but I'm not taking in the walking to and from the train station. Taking a walk for lunch, maybe walking around the lake, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And now it's like I'm probably walking a little bit different just because I'm walking around my house. I'm not really walking those distances and getting the stride in. It's just
exactly
kind of a lean and a saunter to go here and there. And
yeah, just taking a few steps, little turn, few steps.
Yeah. Right. Interesting.
Yeah.
And we have this weird like dip into our living room. I don't know if you remember being over, and it's like
recessed floor.
Yeah, just the living room is like this recess, and it's only about 5 or 6 inches, and just even that, like, you make sure you're not really like stepping in certain areas because you don't want to trip, right? So yeah. That in itself is like the amount of times I'm up and down that little recess that I'm usually am. It's it's like it's just weird.
It's like it's like your little stairmaster.
Yeah, my one stair. Yeah, it's not stairs master. It's my stair master.
Do you see those? Oh, go ahead, Matt. No, you go ahead.
I was going to say, I feel like now I hadn't thought about it at all until you said this, and now I'm just going like, because I do, like, back in normal times, I would walk a fair amount, because I would almost always take public transportation to work, right? So there's there's a little bit of walking there no matter what you do, right? Probably more than just from a parking lot or something like that.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, like an escalator would be like a total mind fuck almost. Like, how am I going to do this? It's just going to, I got overwhelmed in Lowe's, and I'm literally thinking like, oh my God, I know what he means. Like, I'm going to have to get on a train at some point. Like, I don't know, man.
And just being around a lot of people and having to interact was so strange. I went to the dentist the other day for my annual cleaning. I was surprised they didn't cancel it. But what they did do is, as soon as I walked in, when I go to check in, they don't have you touch anything. And they have like one of those handheld thermometers. They just point at your head.
Nope.
Yeah. Yeah, so they just
I don't know, like, what would the response be?
I know, they like slam a big alarm button if
hazmat suits or something.
Like big flamethrowers drop from the ceiling.
We got to start a business. We got to we got to put in like COVID cages, like into your office, and like the secretary just has like a hidden button or something like that. You just go.
Well, they did have me. They took my temperature. They wrote my temperature on a piece of paper. They handed that back to me and said, when the dental hygienist calls you, hand this to her. And so it's to like prove that I had my temperature taken before I would be allowed to go back to the area, to the like the actual office space. Like it was like my ticket at that point to like prove that I had my temperature taken and that I don't have a fever.
Completely foolproof system. I mean, that's perfect.
Well,
like you definitely aren't infected.
Well, I think
It's so easy.
It's pretty
Why
good.
don't we all do it?
I think it's at least something. At least they're protecting themselves a little bit. And I think they did ask, do you have any symptoms? Are you okay? I'm like, yeah. So they're trying.
Right. Making the effort is the biggest thing. They're conscious of it, and like whatever the mechanism is, even though I'm making fun of it right now, the trick is not to like get hard scientific proof that you are or are not, contagious or infected. It's to like make people think about it.
Yeah.
Right.
At least
the actual thing.
Yeah. Are you an honest? Are you honestly here? You're not. Yes. Yeah. Make people think about it. Make people aware. Yeah, you're right. But yeah, just being around, 3 people in the same room, was a change.
Yeah.
A welcome change, but still like just weird feeling. It's definitely going to be an adjustment as we slowly start to reopen society. Yeah. So that maybe this is a good time to transition into our actual subject for the evening, which is to talk about role-playing games. And we're mostly a Age of Sigmar podcast, and we're occasionally a Dungeons and Dragons podcast. Soulbound, the Age of Sigmar role-playing game, just dropped last week. The digital PDF is available for purchase and download, and you can get that on Drive-Thru-RPG, which I did. And when you purchase, you can purchase the digital by itself, or you can buy the book and get the digital for free. So that's what I did. So the book is not supposed to ship until like September or October, but the you can get the PDF right now, and they haven't put out any of the Matt, I'm not gaming supplement. What's the other name for when D&D puts out an adventure booklet? Is there another name for that?
Module.
Module, yeah. So there's actual like gaming modules that are not available for download yet, but there's not a lot of content for dungeon masters yet. What I noticed in this book, you have to make up your own adventures, which does sound like a lot of fun to me. I think that sounds like fun. So if you guys want to play this game, I think
Do it.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Yeah. I'm gonna dig right into it. I've been waiting for this for a couple years, and so I'm excited to finally see it really happening.
Yeah. I'm totally let's just wing it, man. Let's just do it. Just play.
Absolutely. Yeah. So let me tell you a little bit about how the game mechanic works, because it's different than any other games that I've played, but it's kind of similar to what Star Wars is, in that all challenges in the game, whether you're trying to hit someone with the weapon or you're trying to climb a mountain, whatever it is, all these you have to take some kind of skill test. And a skill test has a difficulty and a complexity. So you'll get a difficulty number and a complexity number. And you're going to have whatever the skill is, or if you're just trying to hit an orc with a sword, or orc with a sword, you'll have this difficulty number is a number on, everything's based on 6-sided dice. So you'll have a difficulty number is the number you need to roll on a die. And the complexity number is the number of times you have to roll that number. So you'll have something that's a difficulty 4, complexity 1. Means of all the dice you roll, you need to get at least 1 4 or better.
Okay.
Yeah. So kind of
And
like
your stat will say, like, when you do this test, you roll 5 dice or 3 dice or whatever.
exactly.
Okay.
So there are 3 main stats. Like Dungeons and Dragons has strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. Those are your 6 main stats. Age of Sigmar Soulbound has 3 stats: body, mind, and soul. Those are just the 3 different categories. Everything else is over in your skills, which reminds me of the Star Wars role-playing game, because I think there's only 4 stats for that one, and then everything else is in your skills.
No, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah,
there are
brawn,
6.
agility, intellect, cunning, willpower, and presence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So 6 like D&D, instead of this one, it's only got the 3. Which
Yeah.
they called body, mind, and soul, which I thought, like, why didn't they make it mind, body, and soul? That's like how you normally say it, the common,
Right.
it's a common way. Feels like a missed opportunity. Or maybe they did that on purpose. They were like, but then why not change it?
It's alphabetical: body, mind, soul.
Oh.
There's that, or I mean, they're a European British company, right?
Yeah, they are.
I wonder if it's a cultural thing, like if they say it differently over there.
That's interesting. I wonder if they do say it differently, because it's got to be in some song that sounds like, "You've got me, mind, body, and soul." Nope, body, mind, soul. I don't know.
I was thinking of Inglorious Bastards, in the scene in the when they're in the bar and they're trying to con their way past like the German officer.
He does the German 3 with the thumb out.
German
Yeah.
3, right? Which is with the thumb and the 2 fingers, as opposed to the American 3, which is like, your middle 3 fingers, right?
Yes, yeah.
That's the only way that they give it away. So
That's it. So if you say mind, body, and soul, they're like, "Oh, you're an American. You gave it away."
that's right. Stupid Americans.
Or it's like all together now, mind, body, and everything, and their body, mind, and then it's just a
It's a big mess.
mismatch.
These people.
Mess.
We got called out on one of our battle reports because we were calling this one character, his name spelled Gotrek, right? And we were calling him Gotrek, but apparently over there they say Gotrek. Which
They're probably like, "Oh, you bloody Americans," or something. I don't know.
yeah, they did. Like, "Oh, you guys are saying it all wrong." Like we got comments like that. Man,
I like
fine.
that Games Workshop has like the equivalent of like Tolkien scholars now. Like you need like the 2 dots over the O to indicate the proper lineage or some shit. You know what I mean?
Good trick.
Gotrek, yeah, man. I like Gotrek better, but yeah, it just sounds good to me. Gotrek.
Yeah.
Gotrek. Gotrek. All right, fine.
Yeah, Gotrek has an A in it, I'm pretty sure. Like Goat Rick, yeah.
But talking about Tolkien and all the world building that Tolkien did, this the new Age of Sigmar book has a lot of detail they've put into world building, and which is such a huge change, because one of the things we've talked about on this podcast before is that, where are we? Where is, talking about an Age of Sigmar, where is this game taking place? In the beginning, there just wasn't a lot.
No.
And over these years, they've really built out this world, and now it is starting to look like a rich, deep, interesting universe to play in.
I thought you were going to say rich, deep velvet curtain.
That's my rich, deep velvet curtain.
Because your
It's
portal
my-
looks like a velvet curtain.
Yep, my netherworld velvet curtain.
Yep. Yeah, because when they originally talked about the realms, it was almost like, and like what you said, Matt, like they were trying to be too clever, and they were trying to be real poetic. And it was just like, talking about like silver rivers, water falling into time and space, and like all this stuff, and you're like, what the hell are we doing? Like, right. Yeah. And it's like, and then the pictures, they would give were like, yeah, they were just like these, artistic pieces that weren't like maps. They were just this artist's rendition of the realm, and it looked like some I don't know, impressionistic art or something like that. And it was like, wait, where is this going? Mm-hmm. How is this possible?
And we didn't get a lot for why are these two, the entire game is armies battling, talking about Age of Sigmar. Why are they battling? What are they going to war for? Why is this in their interest to go to do battle? It's not like we didn't know about where they lived, where they came from. What are their motivations for war? What are they protecting? What are they conquering?
And it's interesting because you didn't really get a sense of that until they came out with that Malign Portents campaign series.
Yeah.
And it was this campaign series that took place in the realm of death. And it was talking about how the, chaos had been attacking in one way, and then the, Stormcast were coming through to avenge those that were, to avenge, Shaiish and all this kind of stuff. And then they started telling the stories from the perspective of the people. And all of a sudden it felt like, oh, I can understand. They're talking about these people that are like, they quarantined themselves into their home, right? And then like all these like warriors are going by, and death and all this stuff is happening around them, and what they were hearing and what they were seeing and smelling, and then and all of a sudden it became like personable in a way. It's like, not that I've lived through anything like that, but it's like all of a sudden you were like, okay, I can understand what this is like. Everything else was just written like a history book.
A history or like a humanities class on Greek mythology,
right?
Where you don't have any clue
exactly.
of
It's so interesting that like that's what people connect to so much more easily, and like it's very, I think even like the masters can like lose track of that, because like the what I thought of when you were talking about that was, so George Martin wrote all the Game of Thrones books, right? And there's the main series, and those are all a very specific style that's first person perspective, right? Like every chapter is from the perspective of a character. This chapter is about Jon Snow, and this one's about Daenerys, but it's always what they see, right?
Yeah,
right.
And then the first thing that he did in that universe that was outside the books was a history book, kind of like what you said, which was like written as if a scholar was like, or one of the maesters was telling this story of something that happens, and he put it out, and it had like all this juicy content and stuff from the world that people wanted to know, but like it kind of just wasn't that well received by the fandom.
Yeah.
So then he pivoted, and then the next thing he put out that was outside the main series was Fire and Blood, which was back to the other style, but still telling a history like outside the main plot that like fills in lots of details, right? And then people went apeshit for it, right? Because immediately you connect to it like all of a sudden, right? So it's and you're talking about George Martin, like at some point like made a maybe he really wanted to do that, but you could say like in terms of selling more books or getting more people engaged, like he made a bad decision there, right? And that guy know what he's doing.
Right. And that's kind of his reputation, as like a genius writer, but just being connected to what people want.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the thing with this is like, man, like these guys know how to write it, like make a game. They know how to create this world.
Yeah.
Just wasn't gelling.
But then they got the Malign Portents, and then they got their first big core book that had started to give more and more history of what the realms are, and they've been like over these past 2 years, they've really built out a rich and interesting world in which to play these games, and I think the role-playing game is landing at the perfect time. I think they timed it well, because there's definitely a lot of really fun stuff, inspiring stuff to like put a game together, a role-playing game together.
Yeah, that's neat.
Yeah.
And it's a D6 system, is what you were...
All D6.
Said, right?
I didn't see anywhere else in the book that brought up any die other than a D6. But it's just going to be, at times, you're going to have, you're going to be rolling 20 dice.
Yeah.
But that's very Warhammer, too.
That's very Warhammer.
I was going to say, what's the problem? That sounds low.
Yeah, there's little tweaks here and there where you can do things that'll give you extra dice in your dice pool, and little things where you'll take skills. Say you want to be the best swordsman possible, so you spend your experience points, kind of like in Star Wars. You spend your experience points to give yourself better talents. So what you spend on these talents, or what I'm forgetting the language, what you spend in this other area, you can use to change the results of one of your dice. You can add one to it, and then the damage depends on how many successes you had as well.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So instead of like I roll to hit and then I roll to see how much damage I do in like a Dungeons and Dragons.
Yep.
No, this one's just you do this amount of damage, and then any extra successes will also cause extra damage.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
That's very Star Wars like too.
Yeah, very similar to that one. So it's because everything comes down to just I have my modifier and my die roll. Yeah, what do you guys think about these different games that we've played? How do you compare Star Wars? Like, how do you describe how Star Wars plays?
Well, Star Wars has the symbols.
Yeah.
And if you break it down numerically, it does have a sort of level of you have to roll above this number to get, a success or two successes or a success and an advantage or whatever it is. But when, because I was talking about this with my friend the other day, like the symbols on the dice are interesting because you aren't plussing or minusing. There's not a modifier like what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Like roll a d6 and a 4-up wins. Okay, well then an ability could give me +1 means I could get closer to that success, right? Whereas in Star Wars or games with pictures, not numbers, you aren't adding modifiers like that. You're either adding a reroll or you're adding an extra dice to the pool, or you're possibly adding a certain number or saying this number and that number work instead of just that one number. You know what I mean? Like anyway, so that's an interesting thing to me because that's a big difference to me in some of these games is like if it's the number system, your modifiers are based on adding or subtracting. Whereas the picture dice isn't doing that. Your skills, your added benefits are different. Like in Star Wars, you can add the boost die, which is a 6-sided dice.
Yeah.
So you're adding a different kind of dice to modify the roll that you just did, which was a D12 or a D8 or both. Or you know what I mean? Like it's just Anyway. It's
an interesting mechanic because they could have done it with numbered dice and just said odds or evens or something like that. You know what I mean?
I think that, I don't know. Maybe I'm reading too much into it.
Definitely wouldn't be better.
I think that's actually fairly intentional from what I can tell. Like they're pretty transparent about that they want that game and that mechanic and that system to be cinematic. Right? Like that's the whole thing. And so it's literally like stop doing math and think about a picture. Right?
Yeah.
Right. So they go, what's 15 and 10 D8s and plus this mod? No. Just stop. Like just do quick add them up. There's 5 of them. They're done. That's all you're mapping.
Right.
Yeah.
And then it's got the other side, that cinematic side. It's like, okay, this is whether I did it or not. And then this cinematic side is like what happens now.
So that's the advantage you're
allows-
talking about.
Yeah. And it allows the player to pour over what options they have available to them with those advantages and to kind of tell their own story. So,
and I find it, we played, I mean, it's pretty well contrasted. We just finished Curse of Strahd, which is all D&D.
Mm-hmm.
We went right into Jewel of Yavin, Star Wars, right? And I don't have a perfect thing because I was running one game and playing the other, but I find myself visualizing the Star Wars game a lot easier, or I feel like it's more accessible that way. Whereas, I felt like in the D&D game, I needed to constantly explain the environment. And even though we're doing all of these theater of the mind, there's no maps, there's no real visual aids, right? A couple pictures, but not anything. Like it feels pretty easy. I don't have to try too hard to imagine myself, in this race that we were in, right?
yeah. Interesting.
So
Okay.
I don't know, maybe that's just my perspective, but
Yeah. It's definitely different being on the DM side. And maybe this is the curse. By no means do I classify myself as a DM.
You absolutely are, though.
Yeah, I am totally.
If you do it, you are. You know what I mean?
Well,
there is no standard, man. Just however you do it, it's your game, buddy.
Yep.
yeah. But I can see from this position that I'm constantly worried about how the pacing is going and how engaged everybody is. Because there's a lot to get through sometimes. And early on when I was doing it, I was very like, I need to prepare better. I need to prepare better. You know what I mean? And it was like, I can't be flipping through the book constantly and downtimes. You know what I mean? So now I'm like trying to be totally prepared, and we're doing, and I feel like I'm doing it, but I feel like it's still not like, bam, ba ba boo, bang, ba. You know what I mean? Like in my mind, I'm like, that's how it should be, right? It should be like, okay, all right, Matt, roll it, go. That didn't do it.
Yeah.
Okay, now back over here to the Kel.
Last night's game, we just played last night, and last night's game was great. Your pacing was just on point. I don't feel like we didn't go through long periods of time where no one was involved.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Everybody had something to do, and was directly involved in the outcome, whether positive or negative. But,
Yeah.
we were, and I thought you did a fantastic job last night. The pacing was just great.
Sweet.
Yeah, last
Great.
night was a ton of fun. Like everything synced up really well, and everybody kind of mentioned it at the end. But I mean, I've definitely played games where it's just like a little bit of a slower pace, a little more leisurely.
Mm-hmm.
And then like I think you haven't experienced it yet, but Adam, you've played like in an environment at Dragon Con where it's like,
Yeah.
no, really, we're going right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even in like the Adventurers League where it's like there's a 4-hour time slot and we have to get to the end.
Yeah. That, to me, I'm just like,
Into this story, we're just moving on in an hour.
yeah.
Like,
We-
so that's like a super fast paced,
Yeah.
like breakneck version of it. And I feel like we're in a very comfortable place for this group
Good.
right now,
Yeah.
Because I was
think
going to say, like, what do you guys think about that? How do you feel about that pacing?
that was
You know,
great.
not mine particularly, but like pacing in general. Like, how do you like that sort of adventure league style? Like, got to get through it in 4 hours. You know what I mean? Or do you like that we take time to explore and to delve and plan? You know what I mean?
I think it depends on what we're doing. I think if we go too slow, we could get distracted. We could, lose the plot. Do you know what I mean? But if we go too fast, then maybe we miss opportunities and we end up getting punished for mistakes. You know what I mean?
yeah.
They're somewhere in the middle, and it's just
Yeah.
like, if you feel like it's going too far in one direction, then we probably are. Then, bounce it back the other way. And, it's tough to not being able to do it all in the same room, because just looking at the screen, you can't really tell what's actually get that same level of sense of what everybody else's involvement is. Do you know what I mean? How closely people are paying attention, or if they're not paying attention. But having to be actually here with the headphones on and have to be in the same room, and even though we're not in the same room, we're all in the same conversation. You can't wander away either. It's all about hitting that middle ground. You don't have to hit it dead center every time, but if it's like hovering around the center, that's the right place.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like for me, it's two things. As with my Dungeon Master hat on, I feel like the game is probably always going like a gear or two slower than I think it is. Like from my perspective, like if I think I'm going like really quick, like if there's 6 players at the table, then it's going at 1/6 speed for them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe like 1/3 speed if they're super engaged in what somebody else is doing, right? But it's never going as fast as I think it's going. Period.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm constantly. That's why I have to remind myself to like push the pace, especially like in combat and stuff like that. Like, come on, I need your action. Hey, we can come back to you. It's okay if you're not ready.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. But then, I definitely like even if we get nothing out of it as a player, like if I just have like a random idea about like how could we make this more interesting, even if it's not written or there's not something that's specifically pointed us in that direction, I'm like, wouldn't it be cool if this happened? And just explore that for a second and then say, that's a dumb idea. And then back on track, you know what I mean? Because sometimes that stuff turns out to be really fun, right? So having a little bit of wiggle room in there to like not always be trying to keep a pace is
this Star Wars one for sure. Like it's an open city. It's this giant metropolis. And they're like, in the book, they're like, all right. Like they obviously give me a lot of stuff and a lot of the story and a lot of things, but it's really open too because they're like, okay, guys, go, plan to do it, And then it's really like how much, So I'm like, when are you guys going to be doing what they think you're going to be doing, and when are you going to do what you think you're going to be doing, and when do I have to start like laying the tiles as you're running? You know what I mean? Like you guys are moving, and I'm like, yep.
You get so much freedom to just kind of make stuff up, but once you've made it up, you have to keep it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you wing it, like, okay, I just wung that one, like you're gonna have to remember what was that guy's name and
what did I do? Yeah,
what did his voice sound like? That's always my hardest.
Yeah, you're right. That one is. And I usually have like 2 ways I go, like 2 voices I default to. And so it's like either they come out sounding like they're from New Jersey or they're Russian. I don't know why.
Or they're a hut.
Yeah.
Well, you keep doing this one voice that reminds me of Watto from episode 1. But Watto already kind of sounds like a Hasidic Jew. So
It's,
so kind of New Jersey Russian sound all mixed up into one.
Yeah, everything's just one big like mafia pot. You know what I mean? Just mix all the stereotypes in and just mix them up for me. And what are we gonna get this time?
And what's role playing about if not about exploring stereotypes?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're tropes, all right?
Tropes. Yeah. Archetypes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't know why. I think stereotype just has that negative connotation to it, maybe.
It does, but
I think it just language-wise, maybe it does.
Not not talking about any kind of like racism or bigotry, but talking about like we have certain shorthands, we have certain ways we talk that help. We have because we're generating this world purely in our minds, but it's a shared world, and we all have to be able to understand what the other person's talking about. So if there is some kind of shorthand from film and television that's going to get you there to that shared experience, then you use what you got, whatever you got in your toolbox.
Yep.
And how many times in the movies are they German in the movie and they have an English accent?
Like constantly.
Constantly. It's
Well-
like, to Americans, it's like, oh, if it's an English accent, it's anywhere in Europe.
To use a shorthand from pop culture, did you guys watch Chernobyl?
Oh.
The HBO series?
Yeah.
Yep.
And like that was an interesting thing they did there, right? Because obviously this is set in Russia, right?
Yeah.
Like nobody has Russian accents. They just have the actors just use their natural accent, right?
Yep.
Some of them sound English, some of them might sound, Irish or American or whatever. And they did that on purpose because they were like, we didn't want everybody looking at like bad Russian stereotypes. We just wanted to tell the story and like not get caught up in that, right?
Yeah.
But you don't. I didn't even think about it consciously until they pointed it out, right? So I don't know, just an interesting.
And they still
to-
had, there was classism in there that as you like, the scientists and the politicians all had like a very proper English accent. Well, if you got down to the coal miners and the firemen, that they all had these like more kind of Cockney street slang way that they spoke.
I mean, they're still acting, I think, right? They're trying to
Yeah.
evoke character, but without doing a bad Russian accent. That's all.
Yeah.
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 Right?
Leave those to me.
You could have made it on. You could have made it as a star. You could have been on Chernobyl.
Could have been a good thing. Yeah. So, anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the Star Wars RPG for me, I like like you mentioned, Matt, I like the cinematic portions to it. It's not so much an emphasis on fighting. Like there is an emphasis on fighting. There is fighting, but it's not solely fighting. They definitely are trying to add other weights into the game for you to not have to be a fighter, and still be engaged and still be tested and things like that. But man, I feel like they have this it's like a very fine, like edge. You can go from like, nope, can't hurt me, to all of a sudden like, oh shit, I'm about to die.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Seriously.
and I think it has to do with this, like, so every character has soak, right? So you have this level of armor, and if you've got like 3 soak or 4 soak, right, it's absorbing the damage. But once you get to a point where it's just through that soak, it's like, oh man, you better watch out, because there isn't a whole lot of health. It's not like you're fighting guys that are like 75 HP or 95 HP. It's like, no.
It's that makes it very distinctly Star Wars too.
Right. Yeah.
You can only take so many blaster hits. I mean, like,
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
there's daggers and swords and like warhammers, and then there's like a Gatling gun. One of those does a lot more damage, right?
yeah.
Like last night, Mark's character, Tully, was like, kept missing with that scatter gun.
Mm-hmm.
But man, when he lands that shot, it's just like, the guy is done. So, anyway.
So, back to Age of Sigmar, the Soulbound game, that trope in all role-playing games of like your characters meet in a tavern. Do you know that trope? They actually talk about that in the book and saying, that's how you want to do it, you can do it that way. But the title of the game is Soulbound, and what the soul binding is something that you offer yourself up to a deity or powers that be, and saying, I want to fight for a cause, and then you get soulbound to the rest of your group. And you may or may not have chosen the group, or the group might have been chosen for you. But once that soul bond is in, you're tied to everyone else in your bonding. As long as you're alive, you're bound to them. And I think that's a really fun jumping off point for a game. Like, you, on your own, you think about, okay, here's my character, and here's why they went to get the soul bond. And someone else could be like, yeah, I just want friends. So I signed up for a soul bond, and maybe maybe like I signed up for the soul bond because I want to fight this one particular enemy and in this scourge, but maybe everybody else in the group is like, no, we signed up for it to like feed the poor, and now you're bound to us.
Yeah, that is kind of interesting. And I guess that's how you can kind of mix some of these like really
divergent cultures and races.
Yeah, like some Dark Oath warrior and some, like, I don't know, Fire Slayer.
Yeah, they're like the Fire Slayer dwarves. They have the Sylvaneth, or the tree people. How they come in, and they're supposed to be like not really trusting of other humans, and there's the Deepkin. There's all these different, everything that's in the Order Grand Alliance is, for the most part, there's something from every army in the Order Grand Alliance that you can play as. But once you have that soul bond, it gives you this currency that you can use to help yourself in the game if you want to re-roll or something like that, like the actual game mechanic is. I want to use some of these soul bond points. I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head. Bear with me, people. I just started reading this book. But you can say, I want to spend some of our pool of soul bond points to let me get a reroll. And then you have to determine as a group whether or not that's okay for that person to use it for that particular reroll. And if the group says no, you can still do it. But then you get these like doom points, and like it's supposed to mean like bad things are starting to happen in the rest of the world because you're upsetting the like magic balance that exists out there. And plus now you're just pissing off the rest of your group on top of everything else.
You're giving ammo to the game master, right?
Yes, you're giving ammo to the game master, and maybe the rest of the group starts to think like maybe we'd be better off without that character. Like in game, they might be thinking, "Oh, he's damaging our soul bond. We need to find a way to break the bond with this one person, and the one way to break the bond is killing them." So that could get pretty ugly pretty quickly if you're getting greedy and wanting to spend all those rerolls on yourself.
Yeah, I think it's important. I mean, given that the game is Warhammer, and presumably all these races would fight each other at any moment.
Yeah,
that's why you have like battles, right? Like like there's not any two armies that wouldn't fight. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Makes sense. So like they need a story element there to really bring it all together. It seems like,
Yeah, and you're kind of spiritually shackled to one another through this soul bond. But there are benefits too. You're harder to kill, and that's what the reroll points come in. Like because you're in this soul bond, you have this benefit to you, but it could be a burden to your companions if you're not really great at whatever it is you're doing. It's a fun. I think it's a really fun story element, and I really like that it's in there.
We know from experience, because I mean it's basically what we did at Dragon Con, right?
Oh yeah, that's true. That's very true.
We had a tiefling, or not a tiefling, but we had a warlock and a paladin that were handcuffed together, right? Which these are not two things that would, generally speaking, get along, right?
Yeah.
Or have the same goals, but and it was freaking awesome.
Yeah,
right?
All having to be like, the person you don't want to be around is literally handcuffed to you, and you're trapped in this wilderness, handcuffed to this other person, and it's a fun idea. And that could be the jumping off point for this. Like maybe you chose to be soulbound, maybe you didn't choose to be soulbound. There's one series of books that I really love, the Wheel of Time series, and they have these people that are basically these knights that guard these sorceresses, and they have a bonding that they can do too, and the bonding grants you strength and endurance for the knight, but they're bound to the sorceress. They have this like need to protect them, and they're constantly aware of their like where they are and how they're doing. It's like become part of their mind. And there's a few times in there where someone's about to die, and they're like, well, the only way I know how to save them is to do this bond. And so now you're like completely bound to this stranger, I think that would be a really fun way to play an Age of Sigmar Soulbound, where these people are they don't have a choice. They're just like, oh well, I'm bound to the rest of this group, and now we have to figure out how we make our way through the world.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm into that. That sounds great.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of potential, and just like the creatures are all pretty weird, but there's some powerful stuff that you get right in the beginning, like just the fact that some of these people can fly. Talking like in like a role playing game, being able to fly in like Dungeons and Dragons, that's huge. If you can fly,
Yeah.
so starting out the game being able to fly is already you're like a superhero.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're above and beyond the rest of, you know, role-playing games in general.
Although the interesting thing I've learned there is like it's only really as huge of an advantage as you think it is. Like if everybody in the party can fly, right? Because otherwise there's still like that one, the old fighter who can't quite find a way to get some magic winged boots or something, right?
Nope.
Yeah. Well, it's like stealth, right? I mean, what we noticed was you can all sneak only as much as the loudest person can sneak. Because the second Gundrick goes clamoring through, it's all done.
Very true. It's hard to imagine building a character and not at least being conscious of the need for stealth sometimes. You know, like you got to look when you're checking off those skills, and all these games have those moments where you get to choose some of the skills. Stealth and initiative. Stealth, initiative, and perception. Those are the ones that I like. If I don't put points in at least two of those three, I'm hurting the party. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah, I do know what you mean. Having just played, you had none of that.
Mark, too bad Mark's not here because he's always going last, and he's always the noisiest.
always the worst rolls.
Yep. Yeah, poor the dwarven cleric Gundrick. Not sneaky, not fast.
Well,
But y'all love those heels.
Yeah,
Mhm.
but his perception was probably pretty good.
yeah.
So at least he wasn't surprised very often.
They've got it figured out, I think, pretty well in this edition. That like, look, you know, we're going to give you lots of access to magic, right?
Yeah.
You're also not going to have like some of the other super important things, right?
Yeah.
Like there's a very few. Anytime you try to go back toward like dexterity is probably the most important stat, right? Because it touches so much stuff.
Yeah.
But as soon as you do that, you're probably limiting yourself in terms of magic or something else, right?
You can't really have a dump stat. You know what I mean? Like 5th edition D&D, I felt like I didn't have a dump stat. Maybe I could get away without intelligence. If as a fighter, I could probably make intelligence the dump stat, but still, like every once in a while, you individually are called upon to make some kind of knowledge check. You can't make wisdom your dump stat because that's where perception comes in. Mm-hmm. But also that's where all your resistance to any kind of like sleep or charm or everything, that's all coming out of wisdom.
Yeah, I mean, almost every spell somebody casts at you is a wisdom save, right?
Yeah. Yep.
You know,
or dex, like you were saying.
Right, exactly. There's not that many strength saves or charisma saves or intelligence, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's such a well-balanced game and a well-balanced system.
Yeah, they did a good job with this edition. No complaints so far. I mean, I'm sure if you try it hard enough, you can break it. You know what I mean? But that's you do have to try. It's not just going to happen, right?
Right.
So when you think of playing like DMing a campaign or building your own campaign, how much do you guys try to fill out all of the ability for people to use all of the stats? You know, does that question make sense? Like, because I feel like it's obviously perception is so easy because it's you immediately step into a room. What are you going to see, hear, and smell? Like those senses, you can't ignore those. Those are always going to be the foremost used stats, right? Like, what do I see? What do I hear? What do I smell? But then I feel like there's then these like corner stats that kind of get like your skills that are kind of like in the corner that you don't typically use very often. Do you guys try to dip into there and use those, or just let it naturally be? They're rarely used skills, but
I think for me would be the expression "give everyone a chance to shine." Like if someone's got a really good stat and they don't ever get to use that, then that's a shame. Then they feel bad about their character choices. You got to give everybody a chance to play to their strength. But I also think it's kind of fun that if someone did create a dump stat or min-max a character, to put them in a position where they have to you're the one that's on the spot. Let's see this die roll because this die roll is important. All right, Gundrick, let's see that stealth roll.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I don't think I necessarily would world build with that in mind. To me, that's more about like just an interesting order of events and a setup. You know what I mean? Now, I mean, the one thing I think of when you ask that is like, all right, let's just use the Streetwise, for example, and it's in both. Street Smarts is in Star Wars, but Streetwise was in Dungeons and Dragons 4th edition, right? And so, like, for example, if you're in a dungeon, doing a traditional dungeon crawl, like Streetwise probably isn't going to come up very often, right? Like it just isn't there. You know what I mean? Now, if you're doing a sandbox city campaign like we are right now, it comes up all the time, right? So I think about it that way, but it really, like Adam said, that becomes more just if somebody really wants to have like this streetwise, snappy, Italian guy, right? Then like, then let's build some encounters that fit into the narrative that let him be successful there, right? Or like, have the spotlight designed to be here, so that they can kind of let that character come to life.
Yeah.
When we did any of the Adventures League stuff at DragonCon, afterwards they handed out review cards for the dungeon masters that you're supposed to, as players, you fill out these cards about your dungeon master. And did they give everybody a chance to shine? Did they give everybody at the table a chance to participate in the game? So that's a big feedback thing that they want. Does everybody get a chance to jump in and play? To be a part of it and shine. Not just.
And I would imagine that would be harder to do with people you don't know than people that you've been playing with for years. Yeah. Like it's not that hard for me to naturally let you guys do that in the Star Wars campaign. I will say, like, it's been easy to do that, to let each one of you kind of do the thing that you do. You know what I mean? Yeah. Obviously, I have to be a little intentional about it, but it doesn't seem hard sometimes because I know you guys and I know what you want to do. But if it was like a bunch of people that I didn't know, it'd be like, I could find it a little bit more difficult maybe.
They did it good. I mean, one of the nice benefits of, when you play at Dragon Con, the last few years when I've played, I've almost always played in campaigns where there were pre-generated characters. You sit down with a character and they know what the character is going to be ahead of time. I think it's a lot harder if you don't know people and they come in with like here's this character I invented last week and he has this complicated backstory that I have to try to give you the Cliff's Notes in 20 minutes before we play. Like it's almost impossible, right? You've got to be very, very talented to pull that off. Whereas if you've read this adventure and you know where the cues are and where the bits of the backstory that touch the plot are, then you can sort of lob up softballs for people to smash. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think in our case, like, I mean, it's a fully mature campaign in Star Wars now, so like we all are very comfortable with our own characters. Right? And, at the beginning too, there was still a little bit of trying to find our footing. Like, what, how does the system work? And like, who's this character that I want to play? Because, every time I come up with some stats on something, it doesn't mean I know who this person is. It almost needs to be in a few situations before I'm like, yeah, this is probably what they would do based on what I came up with. Now that's really a lot closer to how I'm playing these days more often. More characters with less front end effort and just kind of trying to let them grow organically, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
And silence. We're making good radio.
Thinking it's softballs.
I'm gonna just.
That's where you just add a.
I'm just doing that. Yeah, just that, so I have a visual where I know to edit. Because I'll be able to see it on the audio side, but on the video side, I don't know if I'll be able to catch it. Anyway, I'm right about an hour and 20 minutes in. I should make a note. Anyway, so I was thinking about other games. Matt, Shadowrun, we were talking about briefly. That's a game universe that just... Oh, I wanted to sample that one since I was a little kid. I wanted to play a game of Shadowrun.
Yeah, and I've only just dipped my toe in it a little bit. So I guess maybe first of all, if anybody knows of good, I haven't tried to find them too hard, but if you know of a good Shadowrun podcast where somebody's like run a campaign or an encounter or something like that we could put it in the show notes, because I'd love to check it out, and hear somebody actually run this stuff. But yeah, it's a kind of a cyberpunk, like near future universe.
Yeah.
So it's like the current setting is like the year 2080, so it's not even a century in the future, but there's also like full on magic in the world, right? And full on different, magical trope races, elves and orcs and trolls and dwarves and things like that. But it's also cyberpunk. So there's lots of different kind of elements all sort of mashed up into this really interesting world where they're just throwing a series of events out there. And the gist of it is there's like 10 mega corporations who basically control everything. And those are like the real nations of the world now. It's not so much
like corporate feudalism.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, okay, Apple, Google, Disney, and Sony run the world. There's no America. There's no Russia. There's no, those nations exist, but like their power has completely been either just given away or stripped away slowly by all these corporations. So you're these sort of edge and fringe of society, punks who take on whatever mission just to survive sort of outside of that structure.
Yeah, so awesome. And reading about it in the past, I used to get Dragon Magazine and read the articles about Shadowrun. There was a lot of Eastern influence. So to have samurai and ninja and all these different martial artists, like you think about in kind of our modern era, martial arts are important. Like to have that magic enhanced martial artist, kind of like a monk class might be in D&D. Like, yeah, to have a gun and a katana sounds like, and you're fighting like corporate equivalent of the Gestapo while you're, running around with a gun, and you're hackers and wizards fighting side by side.
Cybernetics, like you can totally mod your body out, like that's part of the mechanics. Like just, yeah, they really kind of pulled the stopper out. It's an interesting system. I really want to get into the details on it a little bit more, but I'm totally hooked on the flavor,
Yes, so cool. Did either of you watch Bright on Netflix, Will Smith movie?
No.
No.
It's kind of like Training Day, and it's like Assault on Precinct 13, that kind of feel to it. But it's set in a world where elves, fairies, orcs, trolls, they all exist. And otherwise, it's our modern day world. It's just the exact same. It takes place present day. But it's fun. They talk about 2,000 years ago. It wasn't, the death of Christ set the clock and the date system. It was the Dark Lord, this like evil elf that tried to take over the world, and the orcs sided with the Dark Lord, and so the orcs are virtually the same as human, but they're all second-class citizens. Because so there's all this like racism commentary in there because they sided with the Dark Lord 2,000 years ago. They're not allowed to be equal in society. It's not like Citizen Kane, but I was entertained watching it.
Right. It's not going to be nominated for any Oscars.
No, but I do hope they make some kind of sequel, even if like none of the characters come back. I think it was worth watching. The main MacGuffin is a magic wand is like this super rare artifact, and like if you have a magic wand, it's like a world changing thing. Like you can make a wish and whatever you want happens. But there's only like a couple of people. Like it's 1 in a million people can actually wield it. So it's this like really dangerous
the same
thing.
movie?
The same
Right.
movie. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
I want to see these like Netflix,
their studio heads. Yeah.
Or whatever, like these like brainstorming. They're just like, all right, I've got this Lazy Susan. I'm going to spin it. And when it stops, you're going to put your hand in the basket. You're going to pull out a card and you're going to read it. And everybody's going to do this. And then we're all going to come up.
It's like movie by Mad Libs.
Culture things in there. And then,
And to have it like, it's got Will Smith and orcs, but it's basically
Harry
Training
Potter.
Day. It's this weird, like just like you're saying, it's this really strange mashup of stuff.
Or Mad Lib. It could be
Yeah.
just Mad Lib,
It totally is. It's just a Mad Lib, and they've made a movie out of it.
Somebody rolled on a D100 table and was like, "Okay, now go pitch this plot to Netflix."
And they bought it, and they made it, and they put Will Smith starring in it.
Hey, whatever.
But it's like
I think I'm gonna go watch it now.
It's found its audience.
it's yeah. I would love your feedback. Anybody who's watching this, I'd love to hear what you think, watching or listening. What do you think of Bright? What do you think of that movie? Let me know. I want to know. Because I think I dug it more than I didn't. But back to the beginning of the show, I never felt pandered to. I almost did. There's just enough of the tropes, but they did it in a way like, what if the D&D world, this is the D&D world 2,000 years later, into like what our modern era is with the exact same weapons and I thought it was interesting. I'd love to hear you guys' feedback on it.
Yeah, give it a watch. It's homework for next time.
Yeah.
We'll have a debate on the merits of Bright.
Yeah, please. Because, I'd love your feedback. There's probably better movies you could be spending your time watching, but it wasn't bad.
Well,
Hey,
I watched
in quarantine.
That's true too.
considering the movies I've watched in the last week. I mean, it really can't be that much worse.
No.
Joe Bob Briggs Marathon has some serious contenders in there for.
He does pick them.
Yeah, like the movie Brain Damage. Like,
Brain Damage.
Can't believe I actually sat through that one.
I do I'm a big fan of B movies, like we were talking about earlier. If you guys don't have the Shudder app, if you haven't signed up for the Shudder subscription service, and you're a fan of horror, you're doing yourself a disservice because they've got an amazing collection of really amazing horror. But man, I'd never seen that movie Brain Damage before, and holy cow, that was just strange. It was so strange.
I mean, yeah, when you literally have like a penis-shaped alien monster that shoots narcotics into your brain that like does a song and dance routine in the middle of it.
In the middle of it for no reason at all.
I'm not even talking about the graphic parts here, but
no,
Yep.
That's just the funny parts. Like
that's the total.
Are a whole different thing.
You nailed it. That was the entire premise. Penis-shaped alien that shoots narcotics into your brain and sings and dances.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Man.
They are conscious of the allegory there, I'm sure. You know.
Somehow that found its way to the B movie rack, and Bright found its way to the top shelf.
Brain Damage not cast Will Smith. I don't get it.
I don't know. If they'd only cast Will Smith, would have been a hit.
Yeah. Would have been a hit.
What were we talking about?
Shadowrun, like I was saying.
Shadowrun. That's what it is. Back to Shadowrun.
Yep. But I think I was listening to you talk about the mechanics for the Warhammer RPG. I think the mechanics are pretty close. It's all a D6 system.
Shadowrun is? Really?
Yeah. So like you build a dice pool, and then you hit on a 5 or a 6, and if your stat is a 4, then you get 4 D6 to roll. And 5s, and you count up your 5s and 6s. How many you get to those are hits. And if your hits beats the target, whatever the GM sets for the target based on difficulty, then you succeed. And that's kind of the basic thing. So if you have a intelligence of 5, you're going to roll 5 D6, and then count the number of times you got a 5 or a 6 out of those. And that'll kind of determine whether you get thumbs up or thumbs down from the GM.
Yeah, that sounds just like Soulbound. I'm sure there's subtle differences, but...
Yeah, that part's about the same, but what I really like is there's also a mechanic in there where the more injured you get, the harder it is to accomplish things. Like, so if
you get wounded.
You get down to wounded, then all of a sudden, like, your dice pool starts to drop, thresholds and things like that, which I think that's pretty interesting. It never made sense to me that, like, somebody with 1 hit point is fighting as well as somebody with 500 hit points.
Right.
you would probably have some degradation of skills there, right?
Age of Sigmar has that in the regular game, like particularly with the big monsters. As they get wounded, they definitely get weaker. I don't know if that's a mechanic in Soulbound or not for Age of Sigmar Soulbound, but it is a great idea to have. Super frustrating idea to have, like realizing like I'm losing this fight and like now I'm limping, I can't run.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I came to this thing yesterday and I hadn't really realized it until Jamie was like, no, I still have like 1 strain left. Like I can still fight back. And I was like, I guess you're right. You're not injured so much that you can't fight back. But if you do go to 0, you're going to roll on the critical injury table. And is it worth it to fight back and potentially damage yourself?
Yeah.
And that's the kind of thing in real life too. It's like, I'm feeling like crap, but I can push myself. But if I mess up, I might, regret it later or something like that, right?
Yeah. True.
Do I try to run with a broken leg, or do I like stand my ground like Jamie Lee Curtis in The Closet Halloween and stab my guy with a coat hanger?
Yeah. So, and I hadn't really realized it until I was like talking about it out loud, and I'm like cinematically like, no, you should stay down. But it was like, oh, but you're right, you could. But if you do, there's potential that, your eyes could start bleeding, right?
Right.
You could go blind.
That's fun. I like the idea of getting weakened over time. I think I might have talked about this before. But did you guys like Ready Player One?
I like the book.
Like the book. Did you see the book or read the book or see the movie, Nicholas?
I saw the movie.
You saw the movie.
It was entertaining. I wasn't like, oh my God.
It didn't give you the deep feels.
Not the deep feels, no. It kind of felt like, no. I would say like Wreck-It Ralph probably gave me a little bit more deeper feels than, but I would kind of see them both similarly.
They had this thing in the book where you had your character that could go from high-tech worlds to then like low-tech magic-heavy worlds. And there were some worlds where you could have both. And as you're exploring this like physical, like everything was all in the one universe in the book. So you go to these different planets, and that I really liked that idea. I was really into the book when it came out. And I thought it'd be fun to write some kind of campaign where you jump from one system to the other, and actually jump from one gaming system to the other.
Oh, interesting.
As you're going through the campaign. And so it's one character the entire time, but you go to this other planet and like the game mechanics are completely changed. Like you might have loaded out your Star Wars self with all kinds of blasters and weapons and rifle skills, but then when you go over to the Age of Sigmar universe, none of it's worth anything.
Yeah.
Right.
Or once you shoot it 3 or 4 times and you empty the cartridge,
there's no no refill. There's nowhere to go get more.
Yeah.
Can I tell you all that was like an idea that I played with for a long time, and I eventually abandoned for Curse of Strahd.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I had a couple different ideas or sketches where somehow you end up and you find out at the end that the big bad behind the curtain really is Sigmar, right? Or somebody else, some version of that. I didn't dig enough into the mythology to figure out who it might be. You know what I mean?
But like when we got to the end of Curse of Strahd, it wouldn't have been Strahd there. It would have been some other kind of like behind the curtain dude.
Like it's not even like all that well developed. You know what I mean? But that was like the idea for a big fun like ending twist. You know what I mean? Post credits type thing.
Yes.
I bailed on it after a little while because I really couldn't think of a good way to make it work, and I think it wouldn't have been interesting maybe for like half the people.
And satisfying too to be in that campaign for a year wanting to kill Strahd, and then we get to the end of Curse of Strahd and like, oh, there is no Strahd.
He's like,
so problematic for a lot of reasons, but that same thought occurred to me, and it would be kind of cool if you could somehow, make that work, right?
Yeah, to have something like a through line. The through line that I was thinking was that it's actually Ready Player One, where you're in these. There's another book I read called Kilobyte, came out in the mid-90s, but it was all about virtual reality gaming, and there was this like serial killer that was using virtual reality games. Like he would trap you. You couldn't turn the game off. You were trapped in whatever your virtual reality suit was, and you couldn't get out of the suit. And then there's this like feedback where you can actually like shock the person that's in their suit, and there was this serial killer that was figuring out how to like kill the people in their suits. So this one guy was having to jump from one game to another to try and just avoid getting killed, because if he got killed in the game, he was going to get killed in real life. So I was thinking about taking the Ready Player One universe and having the same thing. Like for the campaign, you are a real person who has this character that they've made, but if your character dies, then you as a person will die.
well, wait a second. What?
Well, that's the premise of the game, that we're all in these virtual reality suits, and if someone dies, then they're dead. But you're like you gotta find all these things to get yourself out of it. So you're going into these situations where you're trying to get the dragon's hoard. You know what I mean? Or you're trying to raid the Klingon base.
This week on WARlando, our guest Elon Musk is talking about simulations within simulations.
Right.
This is already like layers upon layer upon layer.
Now, everybody, check under your seat. There is a bomb that will go off.
Or it might be a Tesla. You don't know.
Yeah, you don't know.
Well, that was pretty far afield in my whole my fantasy world.
I know I'm teasing, but that idea is super fun. I don't know how to make it work. You know what I mean? But like, just the concept is super interesting, right?
Yeah.
Just this one, player, quote unquote, right? And then there's all these different worlds you jump into, right? And maybe 1 minute where I also like the idea of like maybe we're whatever you get into D&D and something happens where you end up as a general of an army, right?
Yeah.
You really can't simulate that with D&D mechanics. So then like you shift into, a Warhammer style battle, right?
Yeah.
And then come back out of it, and then that informs the campaign somehow back in D&D, right?
Yeah.
Interesting things like that are fun to play around with.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. I think that's an idea that one of the things they talk about in the rule book for Age of Sigmar Soulbound, that Age of Sigmar is a war game, and that Soulbound takes place within that wargaming universe. So there should be recurring themes of troops are marshaling to go off to battle, and like, you know, outcomes of battles influence what happens in your game. As a game master, they want you to keep bringing that up in the world, that there's all these wars going on constantly, and that it should be something that players are worried about. They're not going to just like march from one city to another and not worry about scouts finding them or being captured as spies, or, you know, they have to be conscious of that anytime they're out in the actual world.
Mm-hmm. And I was reading through some of the Warhammer Fantasy RPG stuff, because got it on Humble Bundle.
Yep.
So reading through, and that's very present in those too. It's very much like designed around like maybe this giant battle just ended, and it's the aftermath of this battle. But it's like, don't think for a second fighting's over. Like, there's still raiding parties, like large raiding parties. And it's like, all of a sudden, like, oh, the scout comes back and he's like, they're coming. We can't stick around here anymore. Yeah. And it's like, you know, all of a sudden your party is just informed there's an army coming to take this town, you know? And it's like, what are you going to do? You got to leave, or what are you going to fight this army? Like you said, like mechanics aren't in here to do that. Mm-hmm. So you got to leave and you got to hit the road.
That's a lot of fun.
But what's going to happen on the road? You know what I mean? It's wartime. So
there's a regular mechanic in Age of Sigmar where if a unit takes losses, there's a chance that a certain percentage of that unit might flee the battlefield. So I could see playing the role-playing game and like, oh, those orcs that fled the battlefield, now they're coming towards you. Mm-hmm. You know,
they've regrouped and they've you know,
now they've got their bloodlust is still going, but you're in their way.
Or you are the ones that fled. Right?
Oh yeah, that's true too. The remnants of an army that was destroyed.
Yeah.
Very
fun
cool
stuff. There's no material at all. There's not going to be anything.
Oh no, there's no huge wealth of media that we can't pull from to make a fun, interesting game.
For sure. Well, we were talking a little bit about, and I don't know if Shadowrun is the right system yet, but I have I don't really have an idea for it yet, but I want to run some kind of RPG that's really, really focused on like espionage.
Ooh, right? Yeah.
All the nuances of it, and like, okay, there can be, I mean, there'll be combat in there, and there'll be all that kind of stuff, but like less of the focus on that, and more just like all the skills around what it would take to like really penetrate and do damage to one of these big mega corporations, you know, or that kind of stuff. Like really just focus in on that, because I think there's a whole, you know, like a game within a game right there.
Yeah.
Because there's always like, you know, if you have the rogue in the party, right, like they can do some stuff and that's interesting and get into some locked room, that's cool. But like, you know, what if you had like a whole subset of rogues, right, that like all these different specialties, you know, and everybody was trying to steal all the time, right? Like that sounds like fun to me.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, something cool like that. Maybe Shadowrun's the right place for it, with more to follow on that.
I think we got a lot of fun games to be played in the future.
Yep.
And we're so lucky to be alive in a time where, you know, we can play these games. We can just sit in front of a computer and have our cameras rolling, and we can play these games. It's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm going to miss this pandemic.
You'll miss it when it's over. Well, I think social distancing can be a life choice.
Yeah. Like some of those memes where they're like, you know, everybody's all of a sudden doing what, you know, like what an introvert is like, that's me. I'm fine with this.
Yeah, this is total.
This is perfect for me.
Like, what's happening out there? I'm already doing all that.
Yeah, like my thing is like I'm bad at walking now, but I'm good at cooking, right? Like these are things like, right?
Yeah. When they say the proportion of number of times you wash your hands per day versus the number of times you shower per week has totally flopped.
It's yeah. I watched them a lot more and a lot more thoroughly.
Yeah.
My first step in that direction was I learned to do the little mantra from Dune, where it's
Yes.
fear is the mind killer, but like you do it with the hand motions, and they're like, at some point you're like, okay, thumbs, and now back of knuckles. You know what I mean? Now other side of knuckles.
So
Nice.
the house over here, we redid the plumbing. And I don't know if I mentioned this before, but the pipes now go through the ceiling and they go through the rafters, and they're the way they ran them, so they're right underneath the shingles of the roof. They're touching the roof. And so this is Florida, and when it gets up to 90 degrees, the water coming out of my faucet is 90 degrees.
Ooh.
That's warm. That's like enough to scald. So I do that. That like, how long can I hold my hands under this faucet? Trying to wash my hands. Fear is the mind killer. Fear is the little death. Fear is...
And only I will remain.
Yep. Oh, awesome. Well, this has been great talking to you guys. Thank you for doing this. I think that we put together a good show. Nicholas, any final thoughts?
It sounds like we need to get playing. Sounds like we need to start rolling some D6.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. What about you, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, the big project, always have more games than I can ever play. Like, it's one big project.
Yeah, it's true. More games than I could ever play, more minis than I could ever put on the table at the same time.
There is a certain inefficiency there that I'm totally happy with. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well said.
Well, you guys know how we sign this thing off. All right. 1, 2, 3. Whoa!
Also, I think it's like 1, 2, 3 breath log. That's how I end up doing. Right.
Yep.
Nice.
All right. This has been an episode of WARlando. I am Adam. You can reach me as WARlando77 on Twitter or just WARlando on Instagram. You can reach Mark on Twitter and Instagram with the handle of WARlandoMark. You can reach Nicholas on Twitter and Instagram with the handle of WARlandoNick. Please leave comments. We'd love to hear your thoughts. If you want to support the show, go to the show notes and follow the link to Teespring and buy a t-shirt, or to Ko-Fi and buy us a coffee, or, better yet, buy us a beer. And thank you very much for listening.